Alrighty, well, welcome everyone. My name is Catherine Farzan. I bring greetings from Prince George's County Village Connection. Um, Again, welcome. I just wanted to kind of run through a little bit of an intro for us. So this meeting was made possible by a grant to the Maryland Umbrella Group by the Maryland Department of Aging. The grant was a partnership with MUG and the villages of Prince George's County. So before we get started, we have so many people on the line today. I want everyone to go ahead and stay on mute. And we will also be recording the session as we have previously stated. We will be able to post it on the PGCVC website in case you would like to share it with one of your friends, an organization, house of worship that might be interested in starting a village. Um, Before we get started, we will be also asking throughout the presentation some polls, very simple yes or no poll questions, and this should appear on your screen from time to time. So please answer it, and then we will eventually go through it. I do want to introduce our wonderful speakers today on our panel. We have Miss Lisa Walker. She's a founder and continuing board member of Hyattsville Aging in Place. She was a member of Hyattsville City Council, directed fundraising for a nonprofit organization, and ran a journalism organization. We also have Ms. Leila Riazi, who is a co-founder and president of the Cheverly Village. She's dedicated voice to voice for local government and civic engagement and has been serving for 13 years as a town council member, mayor, and all around let's do it together person in her community. We also have Peggy Smith, who has lived in University Park since late 2016 and volunteers with the Village of Helping Hands University Park. She has served on the steering committee as secretary since the spring of 2019, and she also serves as a co-administrator on the listserv she set up for 2023 for members and volunteers. Her choice to volunteer with this organization was influenced by her experiences as a long-term caregiver and long-term caregiver to her parents, as well as her personal age-related challenges. And let's see. So our purpose here today is to talk to you about villages and how to get started, discuss different types of villages, and answer any questions that you might have about starting villages. So we hope to inspire you. We hope that you're able to, understand the different things to consider before, forming your own village. So we're really excited. Our panelists are here today because we want you to know that you can create your own village and where older adults are thriving and have all the supports that they need to age in place. And so that they can continue to engage, lead, and contribute to their community as valued members. And the beautiful thing about this is you don't have to do this alone. There's clearly, our panel is made up of three other people. There's people that care, that want to see this happen. So just know that you aren't alone and that we hope to, maybe inspire and teach you how you can recruit these members. So I think we'll go ahead and just jump right in. Again, please continue to remain on mute. We will have some PowerPoint slides up, but they won't always be up. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Give me just a moment. Okay. So let's get started. What is a village? That is our first question. Does anybody have any ideas? I think Carter's posting right now for the poll, so please feel free to answer. Or, oh, I'm sorry, do you know what a village is? Let's see. Most people are answering no. Okay, wonderful. So it looks like generally, it's coming in close. Most people don't know what it is. So let me go ahead and end the poll. So a village is a volunteer provided program, services, and social and educational activities for older adults to help them remain safe and independent in their homes and connected in their communities. Um, let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. So I think our kind of style today for our presentation is our panelists will just sort of chime in and expand on these points. You're welcome to, take your own notes as we're going through this. So Layla, did you want to expand on this definition? There's
Um,
just so much a village encompasses.
well, what I think is Lisa, Peggy, and I will refer to these slides just as we start our conversation. And although we're encouraging people to stay muted just to limit background noise, we also want to invite you at any point in time that you have a question throughout this. We're not looking for you to hold questions till the end. We're going to look at a slide. We're going to enter into this general topic and invite your questions along the way. So, and then also invite you to be on screen if at all possible, just so that we can be seeing each other and be in community throughout that process. So starting with this slide, the most important thing that I'm going to take, and Catherine, actually, if you could take the slide down, please, so we can see each other. And yeah, just take,
The introductory slide is still on.
yes. Yes, just take the slide. Yes.
Great, great.
So one of the most important things, and I'm looking to Lisa and Peggy because I know we've all experienced this, where we receive the phone call of, I want to join the village. I want to live there. Can you tell me how I apply to live in the village? So what a village isn't, first and foremost, it's not a brick and mortar structure. You're not moving to a village. The beautiful thing is you're creating the village to meet the needs of your community. And I'd like to invite Lisa and Peggy in to give a little bit of idea of what is a village, and I'll add as well. Starting with you, Peggy.
Yep. I did some research on villages when I was asked if I wanted to be a part of the one we have here in University Park. And I was surprised to learn that it has been around for quite a while as a national program. All villages begin at a grassroots level, and they are all volunteer. So that to me right off the bat tells me that it's not about going somewhere to some place where you have to go into a building or move somewhere. It's not that kind of village. A village, they're called villages because they create community. To me, that's the key factor, is what you're doing is creating a community within your designated community. And that keeps people included and keeps people connected. Lisa, can you add to that?
Yeah, I can. I mean, there are also different structures. So villages may be a nonprofit. They may be a committee of town, which Peggy's is. They may have a relationship with a town or with another organization, which allows them to get support or to get a certain meeting space or things like that. But they are energized by volunteers, and they are whatever you think your area needs to provide to keep seniors active and healthy in the community, active and leading their own lives and having agency. So that's really what a village is. That's how Hyattsville started. I think that's how all of our villages started.
And here today, you have represented villages that are independent 501(c)(3) nonprofit communities. You have a village that is a committee within a municipality with extraordinary municipality support. You also have tangentially represented here, in Greenbelt, the idea that Greenbelt often says, contrary to popular belief, that the village movement started there with Greenbelt Gives. And the idea of a time banking arrangement where people did for each other and served each other, which has transformed into a heavily supported municipal structure for an independent organization. You also will see, and something that invites incredible opportunity here within our county, would be for villages to start out of faith-based organizations or other existing nonprofit, sponsorship opportunities, especially at the beginning of a village. But the key thing in all of, I think, what we're sharing when we're talking about a village is about coming together to age well in your community, and defining that based upon the people coming together in your community who need services and the volunteers who are going to come together to create the organization and to offer those services, and to try to create that perfect match in and of that. With this, Catherine, actually, if you could take us back into the slide presentation and go maybe a couple of slides forward, because we did do what we do so often in person, is we flew through the slides just in our conversation, which is what we want to do.
Great. And to also add and put a picture to, villages and what that means here for the DMV. In the DMV, there are 79 villages or villages information. In information of those villages, only 5 villages exist in Prince George's County, all of which are, serving here today. Hydesville Aging in Place, Greenbelt International Exchange Service Gives, one of the oldest villages in the United States, Cheverly Village, Neighbors Helping Neighbors College Park, Helping Hands University. So that leaves 74 other villages, 36 Maryland, predominantly Montgomery County, and 17 in DC. We have 20 in Virginia and 1 in West Virginia.
And one of the things to add to what you're saying, Catherine, as you advance the slides just a couple through, the people that you see here, Lisa, Peggy, Sharon Johnson, and Carter, that we've all been part for the past several years of saying, we want for this to change here in Prince George's County, because our community deserves the opportunity to create villages and to benefit from the social connection and the services and supports that villages provide. And that goes straight into, what do villages offer? And we're going to explore this in greater detail, but just to read out this slide for those who are driving and may not be able to see slides. I hope you're not looking at slides while you're driving. But the idea is that each village offers supports and activities, and those supports and activities match with community needs, what volunteers can provide. And something that we'll revisit throughout this presentation, as we have in-person presentations, is for you to realize that where we are as villages here is not where we began. Your village will change over growth, time, and resources. So it is okay to not have it all figured out, and you will be along the way in spaces where you still won't have it all figured out. So it's a beautiful connection. And with that, Catherine, if you could advance one slide just so that we know where we're going to be next. And we're going to talk about what villages offer.
Up at the end of the slides.
There. Okay.
Okay.
So, and this just for Peggy and Lisa to see, just going through what comes naturally to us. And then if you could stop sharing, Catherine, and come back. So, so turning first to Lisa this time, and then to Peggy.
So when we started in 2011, Hyattsville Aging in Place, when a family in my neighborhood actually had a real health need, and a number of the neighbors got together to try to provide food supports and transportation and things like that. As we did that, we realized we didn't want to just serve this neighborhood, and we didn't want to just provide, meals or transportation. And that started us talking amongst ourselves and with the community about what should we provide. So we started with we actually started holding meetings at the city building on different topics like nutrition, like Medicare, getting involved in Medicare, raising questions about what you're eligible for. We even did things like container gardening and other sort of fun activities. And those allowed us to bring seniors and other people in the community together to talk about what does the community need? What do we want to do? What do we think is necessary here in Hyattsville? So we started in 2011. We did not move to become a 501c3 until 2012. We did incorporate in the state, which you have to do if you're trying to raise money and you want to become a 501c3. We knew we wanted to do that because we initially thought maybe the city would take on all these activities. And that just was not likely to happen. And we also knew that we wanted a lot of our own control over what we were offering and the involvement of people across the community. So we were able, through these multiple meetings, actually it was monthly, on topics, to bring people in that had certain needs and certain desires, and allowed us to think through what are we going to do over time. We started early providing transportation and identifying volunteers. And I'm just going to stop there because we do a whole lot of things in terms of food delivery now, and a lot of working with the Riverdale Park Farmers Market and a number of other things. So we have a lot of collaborations going on, including with DeMatha High School, but that's changed over time. We did not do that in the beginning. And I'll throw it to Layla and maybe to Peggy.
So I was going to turn to Peggy, because Peggy, what I heard in my head was whoa, you don't have to be there yet. So Peggy, you are so good about bringing forward that point and that evolution. If you would please speak next.
Yeah, what I'd like to point out is that over the years, the few years that I've been involved with Helping Hands University Park, we have evolved to provide different things as the community needs changed. So the key point for me in this portion of our presentation is that the first thing you're going to be looking at is what community are you serving and what are the needs. And then you start reaching out for spreading out the volunteer base that you have, who are going to get involved in the formation of the village itself. And it's going to be very, very specific to your community. The saying is, if you've seen one village, you've seen one village, because none of them are alike ever. And the structure and the needs and the people who are doing the work are always going to be very unique to your community. So we might have started out when it was first begun, providing services in-house to people who are aging in place, because this is a very, very old community and some people have been here for many decades. And the neighbors started this whole thing because they thought, we don't want these people to have to age and move away from all these friends and neighbors that they've known for decades. We want to help them be able to stay in their homes. And so that was the initial beginnings of why the village even started. But that has to change as the population changes. Your volunteer base will change. So don't try to get locked into what are we going to do and how are we going to do it at this stage of the game. What you want to look, there is a huge variety of services that can be provided and a huge database of people that you can choose from who volunteers, all ages. It doesn't have to be elderly helping elderly. So with that all comes later. Don't get in a big panic over what are we going to do? How are we going to do the rides? And how are we going to do this? And how are we going to do social connection? How are we going to do classes? It's all wonderful when it comes, and it will come as needed a little bit at a time. Right now, what you're looking at is who is your community and what are your basic, obvious needs to provide to the aging in that community for them to stay in place and stay connected.
And one of the first things you'll find, and I'm drawing from my own experience. I'm also on the board of what's called the Washington Area Villages Exchange. When we talked about those 70 some villages across the DMV, to be able to look and see the ways in which villages do match, and in our needs and in our in our missions, and then those individual villages. For us here in Cheverly, we began because of what I think both Peggy and Lisa were saying, that you don't want for people to need to leave the communities that they've supported through their kids and through generations in some cases, and now find that the situation is that they need to leave their homes because they don't have the supports. So when it comes down to what will your village provide, what commonly villages provide includes, first and foremost, you'll hear transportation. And that may be rides to doctor's appointments, but that also might be rides so that they can keep their connection. If their connection is with community organizations or with their faith-based organizations, or to go get their hair done, or these sorts of things, that type of support. But it doesn't only have to be that. For a lot of villages, it's the idea of the social connection. So if that means online bingo, if that means something that is both social and beneficial to your wellness, such as bringing Catherine in as part of a stronger memory program, where you both are able to share and build a connection across people for the stories that you're bringing forward, and then you're strengthening your memory at the same time. But there are things that for villages, for you to be able to determine, is your village going to be only for people who are 65 years of age and older? Or, for example, for Cheverly Village, we have no age requirement. We wanted to be an intergenerational village. We were very clear that we wanted to be an accessible village, and meaning for people of all means to be able to afford, because we do have a membership fee, and that also we wanted to be an inclusive, welcoming village, and that we were determined that our village would be a safe and welcoming place from people of all backgrounds. And we wanted to make sure that our village resembled our community. It wasn't just for people who already knew, who were already in the in crowd. And I'm going to take just a minute here to address the question of, well, why do you do a village? If you have a good community or good faith-based community, or strong home ownership association where people watch out for us, why would you want to do a village? Well, it comes down to, for us in Cheverly, wanting to make sure that everybody has access to these services. And it's not just because of the relationship that you might have with a neighbor, or that you're in the in kid, however old you are, but that everyone should be able to become a village member and be able to feel strongly that they are not accepting services out of any sense of charity. They're accepting services because they're a member of an organization and have every right and opportunity to say, hey, I would like to have this happen or that happen that supports what I need. And Lisa, I see your hand, and Peggy, I see your hand. Let's go to Peggy and then Lisa.
I just wanted to quickly say that part of the reason for villages and part of the reason why we are administering this grant in the first place, is because there's an obvious need for something to fill in the gaps of what government provides, what the local communities provide, what the religious based services are that are provided. There are gaps and there are needs, and if it's done by the people who are in specific connection with the people who need it, then it's that much more helpful to be at ground level.
Beautiful. And Lisa?
And I just add to that, I mean, one of the things that we found in the very beginning was that we had to really persuade people that it was okay to ask for help, that if they needed a ride to the doctor, that we were there to provide it. So it's not just I think a lot of our community is just feels like, well, I should be able to do it by myself. And
Mhm.
then they get isolated, and that's just not good. Another point I think I wanted to make is that there are organizations, there are villages, and as we've all said here, it's you've seen one village, you've seen one village. There are villages in the DMV that only in the Washington metro area that only provide social activities. They don't provide transportation. They don't do some of the other food delivery or anything like that. And there are some that are entirely volunteer and don't charge money. So don't charge even for a minimal membership fee. Our membership fee is fairly minimal. It's $35 a year, but that's neither here nor there. It's really up to your community. Then one last thing I just want to say is that I think each and every one of our villages right now can lay claim to knowing that there is need across the county. And the fact that we only have 5 villages here is just, it's
a travesty.
It is a travesty.
Yeah.
We've taken
Layla, there's a really good question in the chat.
And I do see, and I wanted to bring that forward. Debbie has said, how does the community audit to find out the needs and demographics of the community? Is there a survey? How is the fact-finding portion that's needed prior to planning financed? How are you assured that word gets out so you hear all the voices? So this goes into the how do you make it so? And for our villages, we did surveys. We planned, and the we is, and we're jumping ahead a little bit because we need to get to how do we create the we. So after you create the we, then you find out how you're going to understand what your villages need. We're gonna step into that in just a minute, but I wanted to wrap up this section by taking one more look at some of the services, because some of the services are things that you might not think of, and that would be, those resources and social connections and the educational programs and events. And, Lisa and Peggy and I have explained in other situations that when you begin, you may not even begin by offering services. You may begin by pulling people together and inviting people in to make presentations that people want to find out more about a particular issue. And then as people gather, that provides an opportunity for you to have more people there to introduce to the concept of a village. And also one of the burgeoning supports that many villages offer is to help people understand technology and to be able to use technology to better connect with family, friends, and different social and educational opportunities in community. So to get to, and I see your hand, Lisa, to get to the next section, I just want to make sure that we're keeping track of our slides. And Lisa had gone into membership and membership fees. So one of the things that
I'm sorry, Layla, just before we get into more details about that, I did kind of want to rewind just a tad bit. I know before we got into details about what a village is, what is offered, I wanted to get kind of a glimpse to continue this wonderful conversation that we're having on how many people that are here would like to age in their communities and in their homes. So we have a poll up here.
Looks like 100%.
The second
that
question
poll is flying.
the second question was, do you think we should have more villages in Prince George's County?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's right.
Which brings us to the question in the chat about are there barriers? Why have there not been more? And I think a big part of it is that people are not aware of this program. And it has not, that's the whole purpose of these presentations that we have been doing for the last month is, and that what the purpose of the grant money from the Department of Aging is that to make people aware of how these things can be addressed and that this program exists.
I think one of the other things, Peggy, too, is that that while we have had interest from the county level, the county cannot even provide, the county government is not even able to provide the things that they list as services because their money runs out early. So I think one of the things is that people don't know, we don't have a lot of Prince George's County is in unincorporated areas. There are not good communication links, and that's one of the things we're trying to change through having these meetings, and we'll try to change as we go forward.
Absolutely. So this brings us to the idea of where we've started, we've shared, where we've gotten to. We've been in existence since 2016. We took about 2 years of planning. I believe Lisa, Hyattsville Aging in Place was also about 2 years of planning. And Peggy, I know that the idea was originally that there was the idea of creating an independent nonprofit and then working with the town of University Park and finding out that there was a different way to do things for your community and having that support. So all of this was a process. One of the things that we wanted to make sure, and that where we've used this grant funding and that we hope to continue with grant funding to be able to have support in that time to either shorten the time necessary to create a village by having helpful supports, or to have just that guidance and that mentorship to be able to figure out what it is that your community wants and needs, and how are you going to define the community for your village. Is it going to be by geographic scope? Is it going to be by virtue of a homeowners association or a part of a community? When you're talking about Riverdale, is it going to be all of Riverdale? Is it going to be, the town of Riverdale, the different communities within these types of things? So start to have your mind in that place of, what am I talking about as far as the scope of my idea of a village? And then we're going to go into the idea of the next steps of how we get to answering some of these questions. So Catherine, if you could please pull up the slides again, and let's go into next steps.
Sure.
Okay, so it's, I get by with a little help from my friends. You're not going to be able to do this alone, straight up. And many people who step forward into this position are those can-do people, but you also need to be able to sustain and maintain. So the idea of to be in conversation. Look around the room today. Who else has a name from your community? Who do you know who's already a neighbor and friend? And we're going to go through this in some greater detail. And the idea is, yes, sometimes the idea is if you want something done, you hand it to a busy woman because she doesn't have the time to not get it done. But you also want to look at having a diversity of expertise, a diversity of experience in the group, in the small group that you're bringing together, and to have people that you can work well with. And the idea of your early leaders. So Catherine, if you could stop that share for us to talk about how do you begin to build the village. For Cheverly Village, and I think Lisa had mentioned that Hyattsville had done the same, we started with 2 of us. We're co-founders of our village. And then, quite honestly, it became 4. And those 4 of us sat down, and then we went out to a community organization we had in Cheverly, invited another village out to present about what they did, and had people sign up if they were interested to find out more. And we just did constant idea of expanding the circle. We probably had about 20 community meetings with different organizations, and we made sure to reach out to every community organization. Cheverly is a very involved and invested community, and you might think that that makes it super easy. It also made it challenging, because as you're talking to every community organization, sometimes community organizations are like, what are you doing here? We do aspects of this as well. So the idea that the village doesn't need to do everything, but the village can also be part of connecting and having people understand what needs are unserved right now, and how a village might be able to do a better job of making sure that seniors' needs are met. So through that process, we took 2 years. We also raised money to be able to do what we needed to do. And so that money question we'll get into a little bit later. But going first to Peggy and then to Lisa as to how your villages, how you gathered the people together to make this work.
The history of University Park, Helping Hands University Park, is that it basically began with 2 couples who were neighbors, and they recognized that there was someone specific that they knew who needed assistance. And one of the couples, one of the people in the group, the original group, was already familiar with the village concept. And so she was the one who said, well, we can look at this kind of organizational structure to where, and then we can look at a larger demographic within the community. Our community was already very specifically laid out because it is an incorporated township, and that was who was going to be served. And the demographic within the township was already very specific from their point of view, and that would be those who are already aging enough to consider having to leave the community. So that was their focus when they first started, and it spread from there because of course, once they got to going and talking to people and putting out feelers and a survey, they realized that it was a broader topic, and there were more needs than just those very specific ones that they started with. And within 2 years, the beginnings of the structure were in there, and the organizational parts of it, but it took a while to get that going. And I'm not going to talk about where it went from there, because that has to do with the next part of the next steps, and that's the funding. So we'll get into that a little bit down the road. Lisa?
And Lisa, if you could especially talk about how you built Village Connection through some of the things that you provided early on before you got into services.
So as we said before, it did take us about 2 years, but to form the organization, we were a 501c3 by the end of 2012. So that was actually the end of 2 years, and we went into providing largely transportation services at the beginning of 2013. But before that, we were involved in talking through various issues in aging on a monthly basis, I think, as I mentioned before, bringing speakers in to talk about issues, eliciting from the audience, and the audience really shifted from time to time, depending upon the topic the expert was dealing with. And I'm not sure everybody was, a total expert, but we did use the resources of both the community, the city of Hyattsville, and the county, and other villages from that had already formed, to talk about, well, how do you, just what we're doing here today, how do you do this? The social topics that we dealt with, though, really did bring in different people who had different interests and different needs. We started, I think, with probably 3 people in the organization. Myself, I have a background in nonprofit organizations, both fundraising and other things. But also people that were communications experts in journalism, a community organizer who had run a lot of different government projects and was really interested in intergenerational activities. So we always involved younger people and in our topical formations and other things. So that's really the one other point I want to make here is that Hyattsville right now has, I think when we started, was about 18,000 people. When we decided that we would cover the entire city of Hyattsville and our boundaries would be the city boundaries, except that we have members from University Park, we have members from Riverdale Park, and we have members from Mount Rainier. So some of the people that have been involved with us from the very beginning, we kept involved. So I guess that's where I would throw it back to you, Layla, and see what else you want to add to that.
So there was this wonderful question about how do you find out people's needs. So we've talked about meetings, but there are ways to put together a survey. And I want to talk a little bit about our survey process. So we designed a survey that was not a scientific survey. It was a survey based upon information that we gathered that we wanted for people to hear about how a village might serve their needs and why they might want to be part of a village. So we both were asking questions of people, and we were also putting out there things like, an Uber to get a ride to Bethesda or to Baltimore for a doctor's appointment might cost this much. With that in mind, what might you be looking to support paying for membership in a village? Or that, have you found as you've retired that you don't know your neighbors as well as you thought that you might know your neighbors? Would you like to change this? So we had questions along the way that we both learned how people were feeling, what they were looking for, and then we were also making the case for how a village might meet their needs, and also making a case for how much money are they willing and how much of their time and their volunteer time were they willing to give to this endeavor. So you can have a small group of people, and we're all happy to share the surveys and things that we've done in the past to guide that process. Now, how did we get that survey out there? In our community, you had to sign up for Walking Hills. So, signing up for Walking Hills, we walked door to door. We also made a survey available online. We handed surveys out in those meetings that we held. And we actually got, I think it was about a 20% response rate, which might not sound like much, but it was actually really good across community, across our
30% is
6,500.
good.
Yes. Yeah. So, and that we learned from that, but we also got word out by doing so. Now, the question becomes, how did we do that? We put in some money ourselves, but we also started to have conversations with others in our community who felt strongly enough that they wanted to see a village happen, that they made donations before we were a 501c3. They made donations to us, and we, what we called angel investors, to make it possible for us to do the beginning steps of getting the word out there and making that connection. But in all of this, we pulled from census data to learn more about our community. We also learned from the survey when we talk about the gaps by asking those questions. And we also learned, because we not only surveyed people that we were looking to have become members, but those surveys that we put out, those survey questions were about volunteering and whether or not you'd like to see a village organization in your community and what you might like to do to support that. And turning first to Lisa and then to Peggy.
Yeah, I would say one thing, we trained, we went into, I guess this is moving us along, but we went into training our volunteers first, recruiting the volunteers so that we knew that we had volunteers once we announced that we were available for services. And I just want to make a point that I saw Sarah Whalen's cat in the frame here, which was really cute. One of the services we've provided to our community is rehoming cats when people have had to move and need to have their beloved animals taken care of. We've also done some dog walking and things like that. So it's simple things often that we end up doing. The other point I wanted to make from before is that our villages are different size. So University Park is smaller than Hyattsville, as is Cheverly. So that you can form a village around a size, around whatever boundaries you think is important. If it's a faith-based organization that has outreach to your community, if it has connections to others, all of that can be done. That's what I wanted to add.
And Peggy?
Yes, thank you, Sarah. That dropped my blood pressure about 5 degrees watching you pet that cat. So what I wanted to talk about here was that during the next steps process, the organizational part of it, the resources that are available to keep your databases, the resources that are available for you to have people sign up to get their services and match up with the members who are with the volunteers that are going to help your members. All of that comes down the road. This particular stage of your organization and development will include also possible expenditures if you were ready to go to a 501c3. But again, that's not something you have to do right away. No. And there will be assistance with that down the road for you. We hope that we will be able to do that for you. And in our case, within the first 2 years when we got to that organizational stage of getting ready to go into the next steps, we were approached by the city government. And in fact, I think the initial idea was presented to council by the town attorney. And we were, then there were meetings and consultations and discussions and policy, looking at policies and how it was going to work. But the town government adopted the village as a committee of the town council, which means we have a line item in the town budget. We have a liaison from the town council to our committee meetings. The kind of things that would have to be looked at if you wanted to research that possibility, and you would not have to do the 501c3. We have our tax deductions based on the town tax status. We have liability based on the town insurance. We have to have conversations about what kind of oversight is the town government going to have over what you do and how you do it within the village. We're very fortunate that it's minimal. We have certain things we have to meet. We have to do background checks on our drivers and all that sort of thing because the town covers our liability for our volunteers. So all of those things are hugely beneficial to us as a it's all volunteer. All the committees under the council in this town, in University Park, are all volunteer, and there are other committees besides ours. But it means we don't have to do fundraising, and that's huge amount of time and effort that has to go in to how you continue with your growth. So
Yes, across the Metro DC area, what you'll find and in villages in general, generally about 40 to 50% of their income often comes from memberships. All the rest they have to figure out how they're going to raise.
Yeah, and we don't have
Yeah.
membership fees.
Yeah,
Everything is free.
and what I want to say in that is if you are, not what Peggy was saying, if you're a standalone 501c3 organization, but there are various ways, outside of the idea of a municipality, there may be an existing nonprofit that wants to serve as a sponsor for your organization, at least in the beginning. So to start to have the wheels turn, what are existing organizations, either local government organizations? You can sometimes find out that there are grant processes within your local government that might be able to afford you some seed money to start all of these things. But what I want to say in all of this is this isn't a be afraid moment. It isn't. Because what we're here today to really talk about is that if you have an interest, and really for us to move into having you speak and you ask questions of us, if you have an interest, there's a reason why you're here today. This has been something that has either piqued your interest or that you've already determined is a need or that you're excited about creating or you want to make sure exists for you. And for us to hear from you and be able to respond to your questions about what will be some of the next steps for you, and that we're not planning on going away, whether or not we're funded, whether or not whatever, we're going to find a way to be able to be there with you to support you in your next steps in village formation. So if we could have, if you could start to raise your hands, start to ask some questions. And as your hands come up, Catherine, if you could take us back to the slides for our next step, because when I say you're not going to do this alone, several of us in our formation time benefited by being part of an organization here in Prince George's County, which is the Prince George's Aging in Place Working Group. And Crystal Beatty, with the city of Greenbelt, brought this together because she really wanted to, in conversations with us, decide, we really need to have a situation where we're helping villages to do this. And it's not just for villages to talk with each other or villages in formation to talk with each other, but also to bring in other public agencies and individuals focused on aging, because you're not going to be doing this alone. Even when you're in operation, you're not isolated. You're absolutely about connecting different services and resources as a village. So keeping that in mind. And Catherine, if you could stop sharing. And I really would like to start to hear from some of you about why are you here today? What piqued your interest? What would you like to have coming out of today? And for us to be able to respond to what you're sharing.
You can show video and raise your hand, or you can use the chat function.
And if you can't find how to raise your hand, just speak up.
And then unmute yourself.
Yes, and at least on my screen, my mute button is in my lower left-hand corner to be able to mute and unmute there.
I can start.
Okay.
So I'm in Riverdale Park, and I see neighbors who are older who are making the decision to leave the community, and it makes me sad because I like them. And so I mean that is definitely a piece of why I'm interested. I'm also interested, for me, I'm 60, I just turned 60, and so I'm thinking about my future and what that might look like. The thing, and Lisa knows this, the thing that's been really hard is to reach people and get the word out. I feel like the venues I use for reaching people aren't reaching the right people. Um, and so Corey Slavitt, who's also on this call, had this really great idea of putting yard signs out to recruit people. And I'm part of our green team here in Riverdale Park, and we did that for a tree summit we hosted recently, and it was an amazing way to get the word out, actually. It really reached people that we were not reaching in other ways. So,
And Sarah, let me tell you, that works here in our community. Now, I sometimes talk about sign pollution, but we have Cheverly Village signs in our member yards and in our volunteer yards. And people often come to find out about the village because of those signs. And we put out signs to be able to advertise community meetings. But the other thing that I would bring forward is the old-fashioned newsletter. If your community, the church bulletins, so sometimes the people that you're reaching for membership will be on every aspect of social media, and sometimes it's the old-fashioned paper that's going to be important. Mm-hmm. But then also to realize that you're recruiting volunteers at the same time. So to the we say a multimedia approach or multimodal approach to advertising is critically important. So what are some of those resources in your community? Lisa?
I would also say that there are other organizations in the area that provide support. We do get some support from JCA, the Jewish Community Organization, which is actually in Montgomery County, but does ongoing advertising through newspapers around the area, as well as making up car signs and things like that you can put on your car. And the yard sign idea is a really good one. We had that, one of our early members thought that was a good idea, and we started doing that early on. But church newsletters too. I will just point out that as Layla said at the beginning, we have a lot of churches in Hyattsville, and there was some original concerns about competition between what HAP, what Hyattsville Aging in Place was doing, and because every church has a senior ministry. But we found out that they were struggling to provide support to people who were in their homes, and so ultimately they've called on us to work with those people to get people into the homes. And that's one of the things, I don't want to keep talking here, but that's one of the things the city of Hyattsville is not able to. We don't have liability insurance from them, and while we work together, we are very independent of the city, in large part because they were concerned about the liability of their providing help. Only the police in our community go into homes. Nobody else does.
And Peggy, did you have your hand raised? Okay. So something that I really wanted to add in this conversation is, even if you're not directly reaching members or potential members, to realize that your community, just as Sarah, you were sharing, that you see people who need to leave. We get a lot of the referrals to Cheverly Village from community members who know that their neighbor is not doing as well. Mm-hmm. Or their neighbor may be doing perfectly fine, but they're in conversation. They say, "Hey, do you know about this village organization?" And the idea is to not have people, and my perspective is to not have people come and join your village because they have a need. You want people to come and join the village because they believe in the ethic of what the village represents for community. And when I say an intergenerational village, our youngest village member joined when they were 40 because they had a physical need. Our youngest village volunteer was 14 and helped one of our members who was blind put together his memoir. So that became an incredibly rewarding relationship, an incredibly rewarding experience. So we have Boy Scout troops and Girl Scout troops that do leaf raking and snow shoveling. We have a leaf brigade and a snow patrol. We have organizations in Cheverly that come forward and say, can we provide this to your members or another thing to your members? And so it's all about coming together as that ethic. So please be in a place of realizing the ways people are going to come to your organization is about the layers of connection that you are able to build. But I'd love to hear from others about questions that you have, why you came here today.
And I also think this might be a good time, Carter, to add our poll question for
Yes.
how many people in this Zoom room think that they could benefit from a village? Let's start right there. Or would you be interested in moving forward with starting dialogue in your community, HOA, church, civic association, or friends and neighbors?
Well, those are all yeses.
Okay. Can we hear from someone else about why you joined today and your thoughts and questions heading in, since I'm seeing that people are interested in moving forward? And we all agree that our communities could benefit from villages.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
One thing I'd say, Layla, about this is that the concept of a village is really pay it forward. Many of the people that joined with us early on were not yet 60 and just felt I need to be there because, you know, I don't think there's a lot of structure around here to, and not even just around here in general in terms of aging. I need to think about that. So it's pay it forward.
And I forgot to share that part of, for me, creating a village, I was on council at the time and I saw families that needed to leave. And I wanted to do this from a very selfish reason. And, people often, when they think of Cheverly, one of the things they think of is trees. And I kept thinking, if we risk losing our trees, but as we lose our trees, we lose our community. As we lose the individuals 50 years of age and older, that's an incredible loss to community. So selfishly, I wanted to make sure that people could stay. And then what happens, we have families who come forward to volunteer because their parents, their children's grandparents are across the country and they can't have that connection, or they see maybe what their parents or grandparents can't have because they lack a village. And they want to make sure that they're part of creating a village. And that's how you will also be able to expand your circle of people who say, yes, I'm in to do this. Tell me how. And any other questions or thoughts?
Layla, this is Denise Hamler from Cottage City. Can
Yes,
you hear
Denise.
me?
Yes.
Yes.
I also represent the area known as Port Town. And I
Yes.
think what interests me right now, being someone who is aging and taking care of her elderly family in Ohio, which is where I'm going right now from my week, is that I see there's these senior clubs, but they're very social, or they're related to the senior bus. So I think what interests me is this intergenerational aspect of it.
Yes.
We have our community gardens, and we have our Port Town Youth Council, and we have our churches, and we have our green team. So these are all like pockets of really dedicated potential volunteers that are all different ages. And then we have our aging population. So I think for me, the village concept kind of transverses all that and says, oh, we could use all of those organizations and put together a village to really cater to the needs of our aging population. And I want to also say that being someone who is taking care of at least 4 of my elderly neighbors is extremely difficult, particularly if their families are not in the area. And for me, when they stopped having delivering Meals on Wheels, it was devastating. And that is what almost in every situation caused these seniors to have to move out of their home. And so the last time I checked, there is no volunteers to do Meals on Wheels. I'd like to anyone know about that at this point? And just, I really want to pursue this intergenerational village concept for our community. Thank you.
Great. That's great.
A couple of things that you brought forward, Denise, are really important because you're looking at a model that's going to pull together a diverse set of really involved organizations. And what's going to happen is those organizations are going to benefit from having being able to both serve and support seniors, but also by their engagement and involvement. In many villages, seniors are stepping forward into leadership positions and into volunteer positions. This is not, and I regret that I forgot to say this earlier. Villages are not about doing for. You know, it's not the pat an older person on the head and say, "Oh, nice." You know, it is absolutely about doing with and empowering and creating the opportunity, a sense of agency within each person about taking charge of, and when people say, why should I join a village? Because you want to take charge of how to make it so that you can age well in your community. Villages aren't about trapping people in their homes. You don't want somebody to be in their home because they have no other opportunity. You want somebody who's supported to be in their home with sufficient supports to make it possible for them to age well and be connected and involved and engaged in their communities. And that's what the village movement has been about. And the other thing that I heard Denise share, my mother lives in Ohio, so I'll be going back in July, to be able to support caregivers. So, and there are a couple ways for our village that we do that. If that means someone to sit with, not to provide medical care, and that gets into what a village isn't, we don't provide home health services. We don't do some things that you might do for a friend. We don't paint people's nails or wash your hair that you might do for a friend because it's a licensed service and village volunteers can't do that. But we can sit with so that a caregiver can go to a meeting, you know, take a shower, go out to dinner, you know, this type of thing. But we also can provide companionship while somebody's away at work and somebody would just like to visit with someone other than their spouse, you know, and just have that social connection. It can be that people can volunteer by making phone calls and establishing that connection. So there's always a space and always a way for someone to both volunteer and spaces and ways for someone to receive services. One classic example when you're talking about nutrition, there are people who really want to be able to eat well, but they lack the hand strength to be able to cut or chop their fruits and vegetables. So a village volunteer service in our case is for somebody to go and do that. And they're not even cooking it because the person enjoys cooking, but they lack that strength. So it can be those small things. And, you know, what Peggy was saying, you know, before about learning along the way of things, we didn't know that when we began, but it was somebody saying, hey, could I have help with this? And then we put that out to our volunteers. So to think about and to be in the place of curiosity about what you might be able to support and offer. And I see Sarah's hand raised and also looking to Lisa and Peggy, because I just spoke a lot and you may have something to add.
Why don't you go ahead, Sarah?
So it's funny, Layla, I'm actually very interested in the fact that your group in Cheverly supports people, you know, of any age. That's actually something that's very much of interest to me. And the reason is that I support people with disabilities for my job. And one of the things that's really scary for parents is as their kids grow up is thinking about where their kids are going to live, kids with disabilities are going to live as they become adults. And this is something I'm personally navigating with both my children and just thinking about what that means for them in their future. And I'm just one of the things actually I had talked to my son about, my older son was volunteering with one of the aging in places or villages here to provide tech support for people in their homes, for example, because that's
That's
something
such a valuable service.
yeah. And I think, that would be really nice for him to feel connected to other people, feel useful, and he's good at it. So, it seems like a win. So that's of interest to me. And I was actually speaking with a neighbor, and she was saying the same. She also has a son with a disability. And, there's people throughout our community that, we know who they are, but they don't necessarily have supports to pull them into the community,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. And I personally find that very, very appealing from both the personal and, just a community I don't know, community building kind of way. So
Right.
One of the things we say, I guess I started this and this carried in. There are two things in Cheverly. One is we say to stay in community and age in motion. The other is, and this is just my longstanding thing, is that this is the villages, in my concept, this is what community does for each other. So just to be able to be in that place, and it may work for your community, or you may be interested in having something that is only for members of a certain age. All is good, and all can be part of the village concept. There is no plug that you need to fit, outlet that you need to fit into. The shape is what your community wants and needs. With that, anyone else? Because I'd love to hear, why you're here. Love to have more questions.
Layla, if I could just add on one thing about that,
Mhm.
is when we're thinking about villages and we talk about villages, a lot of time we are very focused on that outward facing service portion of it. What people who are receiving some sort of service are getting out of it. But being part of a village is also a wonderful volunteer opportunity.
It is.
So a lot of people will get involved because they're looking for a volunteer outlet in their community. The other bit to it is, and I see this in some of the DC villages too, where they'll put a lot of emphasis on the social aspects of it.
Mhm.
Because, you may never need a ride to the dentist or, help with your recycling bin, but you may want to go to a function that the village is putting on. It could be, a trip somewhere it could be a activity at a local restaurant. It could be, there are many different sorts of events that villages put on. Some of them have been scaled back because of COVID. And I know with Hyattsville Aging in Place, we're starting to get more things like that going. But the social aspect and the possibilities for interconnection, that's part of what can bridge those intergenerational aspects, as well as for somebody who's like, yeah, my knees are fine. I don't need any help with anything. But, maybe you actually can benefit a lot from part of just this broader community. It's really that community aspect that I think is sometimes, if the focus is all on the service aspect, that people kind of forget. It's there. It's a very important part of villages.
Thank you so much, Carter, because we see that, and we see that coming out of the pandemic. People want to start getting back together in person. And one of the things that we've learned from the pandemic is to be able to offer both. So our book club has continued and has grown stronger by being online. And that's enabled people who can't leave their homes to participate in that. And at the same time, people are enjoying going back on the pontoon boat rides at Bladensburg Waterfront Park and joining together for that, and looking forward to going to Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens. And being able, as our village is able to apply for funds, and we hope to get funds to support having wheelchair accessible van service, so that all of our village members, regardless of whether or not they can get access readily to a car, will be able to go to an event together. So those are things that you can do. The other thing is people have loved going to movies together. And it was one of our largest turnouts. I think we had 40 people going to the Greenbelt Cinema. So together. And that was just fun. And one of the things, and I don't know if this applies to everyone, to anyone on this call, but we had a prospective member come to us and say, my life really was about my work. My social connections were really about my work. And in town, I was about the Boys and Girls Club. My kids are grown and gone. I've now retired, and I want to rediscover, my neighbors and rediscover community. And the village offered her an opportunity to do that.
I would say also that that villages do things for various age groups. I mean, we brought Hyattsville Aging in Place has collaborations, as I mentioned before, with the farmers market. But the interesting part about that, one of the interesting parts, was not only delivering fresh vegetables, but introducing some of the folks in the organization to the fact that the farmers market is there and that they can have a wonderful social time at the music fest and the ice cream providing and whatever. They had never been to the farmers market before. So that was interesting. One of the other things we did early was to try to engage with the Nurturing Moms and Pops group, which works with children as sort of a co-op babysitting organization overall, but also it allows new members in the community with new children to get together. And we started a thing on Valentine's Day that brought everybody together, kids of all ages, to make Valentines that we would then distribute to the community. Well, that brought a whole lot of young parents into the organization who didn't have a lot of time, but it did bring the older parents in as volunteers. And we continue to run that. I think we've run it for almost a decade now. So that's good. It's also a way of getting, as you mentioned, Sarah, getting your son involved in helping on technology. We've did a pairing with Northwestern High School and some of the older folks. We did it online because it was during COVID, but it created a real a reduction of the fear of high school students for these seniors who were interacting, which was really great. So it forms community and changes stereotypes in a bunch of different ways.
We have a one-to-one tech coaching program. We partnered with an organization called DeRote. So to really lead through, if it's through what somebody's trying to do on their phone, or more complicated than that. But we also have one of our very popular things is just general tech support. So maybe I would be here. From the very beginning, I never have understood remotes, and that's why I have several different ones. I don't combine them. But there are people out there that when the remote goes wrong, you put in a service request, somebody who feels comfortable with that comes and meets your service request, and it all turns out lovely. But what that has brought forward is some of the things to look and think about in your village that we've learned from our time is one of the beautiful things about villages that we would advocate you include is that for your volunteers to be trained, and there are already existing materials about training program for your volunteers, and you can customize that to your need. Also, one of the things to be able to provide both your members and your volunteers is the idea that members are background checked. So when you have somebody entering someone's home, you want to be able to provide them with that assurance. And the additional driver's background check if they're stepping forward as transportation volunteers. So those sorts of things, and when you're talking about fees and what whether or not You can receive some of that support through a grant to be able to pay for that. Often our volunteers pay for their own background checks, and that works well for us. But so some of those standard ideas of what you would want to be able to step forward and provide. Volunteers are well trained, volunteers are vetted, that, when you're thinking about putting together your board, how you want to handle people's information, the idea that people trusting you with their information means, are you going to sign a confidentiality agreement when you're a member of a board of directors? What respect do you want to show for that? How do you want to set up your own rules and regulations, if you call those bylaws or however you refer to them? So to just be in conversation about that as you enter this process. And Peggy, did you by any chance have your hand raised? Or was that Lisa?
That was,
my eye. Okay, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to say that all of the things that you mentioned, we have examples going forward. So you don't have to create those out of whole cloth. We have
Exactly.
formal surveys and not so formal surveys. We have, we have background checked organizations that we've used over time. There are organizations that can help you pay for those, all of those things. So it's not something you have to do right now. It is something we will talk about as we go forward.
And Catherine, no, go ahead, Peggy.
Thank you so much for that. That was my question. And the other one is, do any of you have paid staff?
No.
So,
Well, no, that's not true.
Yeah.
We pay a member of the community, actually a volunteer, to help the treasurer in doing some financial things that amounts to maybe $200 a month. And we pay someone for communications outreach, who you see on this call, but not, basically both payments are a pittance. It is not, they are not full-time jobs. So they may be full-time jobs, but they're not paid as full-time jobs.
So what Lisa and what Peggy are going to say is important, but please understand there are villages who do have paid staff. And there are villages such as Capitol Hill Village that have extensive staff and extensive funding and can do more. And so some of that is when you're planning for your village's growth is to look at sustainability. Will what you're providing be able to be sustained solely by volunteers? Or, for example, we have brought in a half-time contractor position to handle some of the administrative tasks so that our village volunteers can do what they're good at. And that's, connecting with community, planning events, doing some of these things. But maybe what they're not good at is pursuing some of the admin stuff. So just to be flexible in your model. And so when you're talking about later, and this doesn't have to be now in any way, but when you're talking about your amounts of what you're thinking of fees and these sorts of things, to be able to look at where you want to be and to be flexible for where you want to be. But that also invites something that we might be able to do here in Prince George's County that they're starting to look at in Montgomery County, and that they're doing in different ways across the country and to some extent in Washington, D.C. as well. And that's exploring a different model of village, which is referred to as hub and spoke. And there are even two different models of hub and spoke. But the idea that if there is an organization or a support for some central services that villages can draw on, that might provide some of that administrative support, that might provide some resource management or care management or these sorts of supports. And then each individual village serves the characteristics of their community and the needs of their community, but is able to not necessarily need to provide everything as an individual village. So as we grow in the village movement here in the county, we might want to turn to that direction that Montgomery County is now looking at for their villages. And that might be a way to stretch the dollar and be able to do more for our individual communities. And Peggy, I see your hand.
I just noticed that Corey came in on video. Corey, did you have a question?
Oh, no, my clothes dryer stopped. So
Oh, okay.
Good.
so I
Just didn't
thought,
want you to get left behind.
oh no, thank you. I don't feel left behind at all. And since I'm talking and you're seeing me, I really believe in the village concept. I'm a dues paying member of the Tacoma Villages, even though I don't live there, and also Hyattsville Aging in Place. I volunteered with both. And then I'm also
Wonderful.
a senior center in Yellow Springs, Ohio, where I moved here from, where I think I
All
might
roads go through Ohio or to Ohio.
Right, right.
So,
do. They do. And
yeah.
I just really believe so strongly in community and valuing all age groups, but I do feel that in recent years, at least our society has seen seniors as disposable and dismissible. And anything we can do to bring different age groups together increases the value of community.
The incredible resources that we're tossing to the side
Yeah.
of an older generation. And for me, I think it's also a cultural thing that it's very difficult for me to see older adults dismissed, disrespected, and discounted. Because the loss of that, as I said before, it damages all of our communities. And it's an incredible loss within our family structures as well. And people have benefited from their families being able to connect with older adults, whether or not they're able to connect with the older adults of their family. Catherine, if you're able to pull back up the slide presentation about resources, and we will be sending these out to you in flyer form, but just for you to be able to see on the screen for a minute. So there's us, the Prince George's County Village Connection, and we'll be able to provide information to you. There's the organization that I referenced earlier, the Washington Area Villages Exchange. So we hope to be able, through PGCVC, to be able to offer you some one-to-one mentoring and support. In a more general sense, the Washington Area Villages Exchange is open to every village in formation, or just because you want to find out more about the village movement in the Metro DC area. And so, and please go ahead and check that out. On the national level, there is the Village to Village Network, and you can find out more by visiting their website, and you can find out more from them by then being able to ping into different communities and different villages across the country and just start taking a look at their websites and what they offer. That's an easy way to do research about.
And I would just say, since a couple of people, Leila, have mentioned their parents in other states, they also will provide you a list of all of the villages that are in formation or are online. So you can look and see whether there's a village close to where your parents or your aunt and uncle or other friends of the family are.
Yeah, they have a map feature where you can zoom on in, and there's nothing where my mother is in Ohio yet. But there
True.
are. Columbus has a very strong village community, Columbus, Ohio. And then there is the Village Guide. It's one of the many ways of looking at village development and sustainability documents. There are others, but that is a good starting point. And we will send this information out to you. And I don't know if I had a chance to put in slides, but something, because you have participated here, that Crystal Beatty, there we go, with the Maryland Umbrella Group, we're offering, and we say free, we do this, we've done this before and we continue to do this, but just to consult via Zoom about what it is you're looking at, what it is you're thinking about, additional questions about forming a village. So, and this we will be sending out to you as well. So you don't need to scramble to write this down, but just to let you know what you will be receiving. And with that, I know that Carter has, oh yes, thank you, Carter, for the reminder that this is on the website. Please see that in the chat. And you probably are familiar with the website because you signed up for this. And please pay attention. And Catherine, if you want to talk about the survey, or Carter, if you want to talk about the survey, because this is important for us to be able to continue to do the work that we're doing.
So, just to kind of reiterate what Layla was saying, you'll receive a one-pager that you can use as a form of speaking with your friends or anybody else, like an organization who's interested in forming a village. You'll get that within like 24 hours. It'll just be a one-pager, talking points, resources, the consult that Crystal can organize a time for you to meet through Zoom. And then let's see. Currently, and I just wanted to add this, the Aging in Place Prince George's Working Group is a group that meets quarterly with the local villages and other aging industry professionals. So in case you were interested in, joining us for that meeting, it is a quarterly meeting.
It's bi-monthly.
I have really,
You
I'm
know,
sorry.
and
Bi-monthly.
it does say quarterly on the slide, but in truth, it is
It's every 2 months.
every 2 months.
And so the Maryland Umbrella Group and PGCBC have applied for another round of grant funding from the Maryland Department of Aging to help at least 5 villages eliminate many of the expenses associated with starting the first year, within the first year of operation of a village. So yeah, Carter, you can take it away. We do have a brief survey for you to complete. There will be a link in the chat that appears, and if you can complete that now before exiting, that would be great.
Yeah, so the link is there in the chat, and please, if you just click on it, it should pop up for you. If you need to, you can also save a copy of the chat locally and get back to not only that survey, but also the link for the references, that resources that was included a moment ago.
And can everybody access chat? If not, just tell us.
Chat, so chat is on the same bar that the mute button is. There's also you'll see participants, share screen. It's right in between that. So once you hit chat, it'll expand your screen where you see everybody's face, and you'll be able to kind of scroll down and it'll show you what the newest message is in the chat.
So the question is, Catherine and Carter, I routinely get a copy of the chat after Zoom meetings. Does every participant, or is it only for the organizers?
I think it's the organizers only.
Yeah,
so maybe we can send that if we're going to send everything out. If we don't get all the responses back right away, maybe we can send that link out again, Carter.
For example, because I know Denise is driving right now, and so we would be able to, fill that out.
Yes, we can do that too.
Yeah, thank you. So we are winding down. We have about 15 minutes left. I don't want to hold anyone, but also here, if there are any more specific questions about next steps or what prompted you to come here today. And then also wanted to make sure that, Peggy and Lisa and Carter had an opportunity to say what was on your mind as we've gone through this past, hour and a half that you want.
I just want to thank everybody that came, that attended. I hope we answered all your questions. Please feel free to follow up and touch base with us if you have more. That's what we're here for. And we hope you decide you want to start a village.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks like Gilda Rice and Denise were going to say something.
Please go ahead.
I'm in Oxon Hill, Maryland.
Uh-huh.
And this is Gilda Rice.
Okay.
And the reason that I wanted to participate in this conversation had to do with the fact that the realization that there are a lot of people who are lonely and don't have contact with others. And one of the things that I try to do within the group, that people that I know, is call and send cards and emails and those types of things. And I was just interested in what the village looked like. And you have answered all the questions that I had. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Beautiful.
Yep.
And Gilda, what you just shared is a beautiful way of supporting people.
Right. And you could, Hyattsville Aging in Place has what we call a phone tree, which started out as a way to keep in touch with the people that we were that were largely in their homes and not outside, and maybe lonely. We also send cards at holiday time as well as around people's birthdays. So you could organize, I mean, it sounds like you've already organized that. Your village could do that and then think about expanding beyond that.
And in our village, we coupled our tech assistance and our technology resource program. We were able to obtain a grant to provide people with money who otherwise couldn't afford tablets and things like that, to be able to have a weekly Zoom Friday at 5 p.m. where people joined in, and there wasn't a topic assigned, there wasn't anything assigned, it was a social hour. For people, and sometimes people would talk about their trip if they had one, or about how difficult their week was, and it was just that other social occasion. And the other thing that is, we do a hand delivery of a newsletter from the village that we call Pony Express. We email it out to many members, but we also recognize for some of our members, they need that hand delivery and that opportunity to be face to face. So there are so many ways to connect and to individualize and personalize that connection within your village.
Yeah, and I would say that, we do an extensive food delivery, but the most important from the farmers market, in order to get healthy, fresh vegetables to people. But the most important part of that is the person-to-person contact. It is we are now doing it twice a month, and it is the fact that they have that a person will deliver these things and also carry on a conversation. So it's a nice way of making sure that we're in touch with
And that's
people.
one of the things that was great about Meals on Wheels for communities who have lost Meals on Wheels. Quite honestly, it's not so often the food. It is that connection.
It's the connection. Yeah.
Or that observation as you come into someone's house that something is not quite right. Something's not going as well as it used to before. So, but
I'd like to just thank everybody for coming, and just to reiterate again that that all of us, that each one of our villages change over time, and certainly the services that we provide have changed greatly over time. So it is, don't worry about doing all this. Just think about what Peggy has stressed through this call. What's the geographic area that you want to serve? What are the kinds of things you want to do? And, and who are the people you want to contact? I mean, that's a way of getting started.
Yeah, baby steps, right? You're not going to become a village over this conversation. It might not be a year from now. It takes a lot of planning, and I feel like maybe villages that do develop fast have a lot of resources to do that. So maybe you're just starting out to figure out what those resources are. So be patient with this process.
Yeah.
I would also say, Catherine stressed planning, but we were sort of the guts ball approach. We were like, no, we're doing it. I mean, I don't know how it's going to work out, but the small crew that started said, yep, we're going ahead, and it'll come together. There was not, and I think I will just say our $35 membership fee was part of that, and it's created constraints for us in the future, so we're beginning to think about how we change that at this point.
Yeah, and the one thing that I would like to leave you with, along with my thanks for taking time out of your Sunday afternoon to be here, is this is a lot of hard work, yes, but it's a work of joy. I mean, and it's one of those things that when you're doing good work with good people, that you find that there is an energy that comes with that. So often, so much of what we're experiencing in this world kind of drags you down. This is something that empowers, energizes, and uplifts. So welcome to the journey. Welcome to the adventure. And I really hope that we're going to see you again soon.
And Carter, I wonder if you can put our direct emails in one of those for each one of us.
Oh,
So that
we can put in chat.
That people don't get on chat. There are lots of people who also weren't here today. So
yeah, and since we're ending the call shortly, we can probably add that if that's okay with all our panelists today. Your emails, if that's easiest for everyone.
For me, email and phone number, because text and voice is often a good way to reach me.
Email is fine.
Yeah.
Email and phone number is fine for me.
So I would say the simplest thing is if you go to pgcvc.org, the website, down at the bottom of the homepage, there are there are links to each of the 5 villages, phone numbers, and email us link.
Okay.
So,
Dear Carter.
yeah.
So the email and phone number for me is the actual Helping Hands, not my personal.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
universitypark@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they might not get a response immediately from that.
I will,
so.
not right away, but I'll be notified. I will get the message.
Okay.
And I'm putting mine in chat for those who are here right now. Otherwise, you can certainly reach me through our website, because I monitor that as well. So, Catherine, anything else since you've been guiding us through? Anything?
No, I just want to say thank you to all of you for joining us today. Thank you, Layla. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Carter and Peg, for joining us and really taking the time to talk about something that clearly we're all passionate about, and we want to inspire others to be just as passionate. And I feel like the one thing when I think about villages is it's made up of so many little families, right? And then we become together as a whole a bigger family. And so we're all looking out for each other. So that's what our hope is for everyone just thinking about what a village is, like how to become one, that, stay inspired. Definitely find your people as we have. We're very, I think, blessed to have not only have like-minded wishes for our communities, but also just that we're just so passionate about this work. We are really enthusiastic about this work. So again, just thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, presenters. And if you have any questions, we will, like I said, send you a one-pager with all the information. But thank you, and I hope everyone has a great Sunday.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.